Thank you for joining me. This is Michael Vasquez with the Binghamton Political Buzz Examiner.com, and we now have opportunity to speak with New York 52nd District State Senator Fred Akshar. And I know we've been looking forward to doing this for a while. I know you have a very busy schedule, so first I want to just thank you for taking the time out to speak with us and to go over some of our questions.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much, and I'm glad that we've finally gotten a chance to sit down for a few minutes and discuss issues that are important to you and people who are following you. So I look forward to the discussion.
Just to let you know, some of the questions that we have here are not only from my own research, but also from individuals that have stopped me on the street, contacted me through Facebook, Twitter, my websites. So we have a few different areas that people have contacted us on.
Yeah.
One of the first things I want to go over is you've had an incredible win in the special election. You've been very busy since that time. It's part of the reason we haven't been able to speak. You've been out with the public. You've been talking to constituents. You've had, monthly, if not multiple monthly updates on your Senate website, letting people know exactly what you've been up to. This is phenomenal. You've really been directly a man of the people. And I think that needs to be said, and we appreciate that. We want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that accessibility is key. And the only way that we're going to be successful as a community is if we continue down the path that we've started for the first 4 months. I mean, the only way that I can properly represent people is if I'm listening. So, you know, we are doing these district updates a couple of times a month. I mean, it affords me just a brief opportunity to hit some of the highlights, some of the bigger things that we've been working on or focused on. And then, you know, between our pop-up meetings that we've been having and the traveling that we're doing in the district, I think it's a really good balance of me spending time in the community, listening, and then, you know, letting people know what we've been working on. So,
okay. Now, just for people to know, in case they want to see some of the legislation that you've been working on, the updates that we're speaking about, they can always go to akshar.nysenate.gov.
That's right.
And that'll bring them right to your website there.
That's right.
Always want people to know what's going on. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so let me start with some of the questions. I have more than we'll ever possibly get to. Early on in your agenda, since you got elected, you identified your agenda as focusing on improving business, especially for small business in New York State, and the heroin epidemic. Let's start off with, I know that you put a bill out on January 29th for the small business to try and improve that. I know that you've been appointed to the Heroin Commission. Tell us, how are these projects, and overall, how is it going so far?
Yeah, one thing that I've learned about Albany is that things move entirely too slow. And there is a lot of bureaucracy there. So getting things, you know, I come from an environment in which we were able to accomplish things, programs, projects in relative short time after you did your research and, you know, you were able to form a team. So the bureaucracy has kind of slowed things down. Part of our small business package was pushed over into the budget during the middle class tax cut. A lot of small businesses, as you well know, file under personal income tax, and if they meet those certain thresholds, they're going to be paying a reduced rate. So I was pleased to see that. I was unhappy with the fact that we did not do away with the 18A energy surcharge tax in this budget. It's due to sunset next year. I think we would have been in a better position to be able to do it this year and during the budget process. That didn't happen. So I'm sure we're going to get to the minimum wage at some point during this conversation. But you know, when we talk about the minimum wage, maybe we can come back to the small business, and I'll just move to the heroin if that's okay with you.
Sure.
The leader has put me on the heroin task force. So I'm excited about that. We are having a Senate roundtable discussion April 13th here in the district. I'm looking forward to that. My colleagues are coming down. We've really taken a very good cross-section of providers in this community and have set them on the panel. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. Able to secure $25 million in this budget for heroin and opioid related issues. It's not enough money, but it's much more than the $6 million that the governor wanted to put in there. Now it's going to be an issue of ensuring that we're investing that money properly where it needs to go. You know, we were talking before we started. this community is rich and steeped with people who I think really care
Yeah.
about the issue.
Oh, yeah.
They're very very dedicated to their particular discipline, and everybody wants the same outcome. We have to ensure that we don't allow ourselves, to get in each other's way. We need to ensure that we're unified in our mission. Not that any one person's plan is the appropriate plan or the be-all, end-all, because listen, quite frankly, I'm sure everybody would agree with us that if there was a simple solution, a single solution, we would have implemented it, and we would be having a discussion about something totally different,
Right.
not dealing with the heroin and the opioid issue. There's a lot of work to be done. We need to continue to educate people, not only our young people. It's taken us a long time to get into this position. I truly believe that. This didn't happen overnight. And getting ourselves out of this is not going to happen overnight either. So that's why I think it's critically important that as dedicated as everyone is in this community, we don't allow ourselves to get in each other's way, and we unify and we move together. So I'm going to continue to advocate for that. I think it's critically important. This is a non-political, non-partisan issue, and political feelings or political position should never come into play when we're making decisions on this particular issue.
For the information for people who are unaware, the April 13th event is going to be at Shenango Valley High School,
Sure.
and it's going to be at 4 to 6 p.m. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right, and everyone is welcome. Again, we are limiting discussion to the panel in terms of we're taking questions now. Akshar.nysenate.gov. We're going to have an opportunity for folks who come in to provide written testimony, but the oral testimony that's given will be from the people on the panel. And again, it's a good cross-section of people who have lost a loved one, people who are working in the non-for-profit world, hospital providers and law enforcement, district attorneys. So I'm looking forward, again, to bringing my colleagues to our district so they can hear firsthand what we're dealing with specifically in the 52nd. And quite frankly, I think it helps, a roundtable like this, and I want to hit on one other point if I can.
Sure.
When I was elected, very soon thereafter, we formed our own heroin advisory committee, if you will.
Right.
And there's about 15 people on it, all local parents who have dealt with addiction in one way, shape, or form with their children, with a loved one. Some have lost loved ones, unfortunately. Some are battling with addiction as it pertains to their loved one. And, forming a group like that really helps me craft my legislative agenda because, as I've said before, we can all have good ideas, but unless you've actually walked a mile in somebody's shoes, you truly don't know what they're facing.
Of course.
And I want to go back to my bureaucracy statement.
Okay.
With this particular issue, it's so emotional, and it's driven so much by emotion. We want results tomorrow.
Right.
That's what everybody wants.
Yes.
And as I said, it's taken us a while to get into this, and I think it's going to take us a while to get out of it. But as long as we stay together, we continue to listen to one another and work with each other, regardless of political affiliation or regardless if you think your plan is a little bit better than the next person's, we're going to be successful. But we have to ensure that we stay together.
Okay. I'm glad, and I thank you for all the insight on that. I know it's a very big issue, and a lot of families are being affected, and I do like the idea that I believe it's interesting to hear that there's going to be a cross-section that's going to be available at the Shenango High School going over this with the community. Let me switch gears a little bit
Sure.
before we get to minimum wage, and you know that's coming up. And I know you don't know what any of the questions are, but there is one question that I did mention to you. Well, I sent you the memo from, it was from State Senator Seward from February 17th. I did send you a copy of the memo to let you know that I would be asking a question on that. The question that was asked is about the ammo, the ban. In the memo from Senator Seward, it notes that that he wants to get together a coalition to try and repeal the ammunition ban, as well as stop all funding for the New York SAFE Act. You did get a chance to review the document, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Didn't want to surprise you. Wanted you to
Sure.
know what we were going to speak about. The question about that's come up is, why didn't you sign that?
You know, this has been such a learning process for me in terms of this new job in my first 4 months, and I've openly admitted this to people when we're at our pop-ups. I have not been paying a great deal of attention to the SAFE Act specifically. I was focusing my energy and attention on my small business issues and my heroin issue. You know, the SAFE Act, I've said this openly. It was a travesty, and it was created, and I self-admit this. It wasn't just created by Democrats; created by Republicans as well, and they're both to blame for that. I have openly said that I don't think we could if we could pass a full repeal in the Senate, which I don't think we can, because I don't think some of my Republican colleagues would move that legislation along. We all know that it would never get through the Assembly, right?
Sure.
Let's say it did, and it got to the governor's desk. That's a signature piece of legislation for him,
Veto.
right? Never.
It's a veto.
He's never going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of misinformation or a lot of misunderstanding too. And again, I'm still trying to educate myself on this issue. I was never going to put myself in a position where I was going to ask to defund the state police, the Department of Criminal Justice Services, and so on and so forth. There is no specific money lined out in the budget for the SAFE Act specifically. As a matter of fact, the Senate Republicans, in an effort this year to take funding away, removed an additional $7 million from ITS in their budget, because the governor does this a lot, right? He will put just pots of money and not specifically say what these monies are for. And during some of the budget discussions and with the finance committee and so on and so forth during testimony, specific questions were asked about the SAFE Act and pots of money. So the governor had requested a significant amount of money in one pot that was not lined out. So we were able to remove $7 million of that in the event that he thought he was going to use that money for something specifically related to the SAFE Act. And in terms of, go ahead,
May I ask,
Michael.
how many pot? You took out $7 million. How much was left?
You know what, Michael? Without reviewing it, I think it was a total of $30 million.
That's fine.
That's fine. And I want to double check that.
Doesn't have to be exact. I understand we're talking generally here.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I think the number was $30 million, and it was reduced by 7.
No problem. Just want to give a perspective
Yeah.
for people. But that's fine. Go on.
And in terms of the state police, I think it's important. There's some discussions about database and the state police. I think there's some information being talked about that this database and the shared services issue that they're working on is directly related to the SAFE Act. My understanding is that the database that they're talking about in the shared services issue is that a lot like in my prior life, we used a specific computer system where we would put everybody's information, addresses, their histories, so on and so forth.
Yes.
We don't share, I say we, when I was at the sheriff's office, we did not have direct access to the state police's information, nor did they have access to our information.
Okay.
So it's my understanding there's $10 million set aside in the state police budget for this database. What's good to know moving forward is that before $1 of that $10 million can be spent, there has to be an MOU put in place,
Yes.
so everybody completely understands, right,
Right.
how that money is going to be expended.
Right. And that's part of what Seward was looking at.
Yep.
So does that mean that you still oppose the New York SAFE Act?
Oh, I certainly do.
Okay. I just want to be.
Yeah.
I just want the clarification.
No, Michael, my position on the SAFE Act and firearms has never changed. I mean, I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. I was very open on the campaign trail about the mental health provision. I was supportive of.
Right.
but the fact of the matter is this: is that at the time, government pulled a very fast one on the people.
Yes.
And law-abiding citizens went to bed and they woke up potential criminals, and that's not the way you do business.
Yeah. That was me, by the way. I was one of the
Right.
people who woke up overnight.
Sure. It's not the way we should do business. No different than the passage of the budget. Where you're up for 14 or 15 hours.
Right.
It's not the way you do business. I've said often, maybe you've heard me say it, when big issues like this come up, we have to have meaningful conversations on the front end of these issues.
Yes, yeah.
Because look, we're having these conversations now about, what about this $10 million pot in the agency ITS? What about this $20 million pot in the state police? Is it really going to be used to protect the people, or is it going to be used for the SAFE Act? If we would have had those meaningful conversations and allowed the people to be heard on the front end of this issue, chances are we wouldn't be having these conversations now. But that's not the way that government chose to move on this particular issue. But I am opposed to the SAFE Act. I say this when we're out at our pop-ups because it comes up. I mean, I'm also a realist.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody asks me, are you going to repeal the SAFE Act? I'm honest with them. And I tell them, we could put a bill in to repeal the SAFE Act. It wouldn't move. And I'm just being brutally honest with people.
True.
Because I don't want to
It's
give
the
people
politics.
I don't want to give people false hope or false promise that we can change this and we can change direction. I'm not even entirely sure if we got a pro-gun governor.
Well, I know we don't. I've said as much in my commentary so far.
Right? Oh, we don't have one now.
Right.
If we had one and we could pass it in the Senate, does that ever move in the Assembly? And I don't know. It's downstate centric, you know that. It's controlled by...
Well, I understand, but I think, and I do think it's important, and I thank you for giving people a perspective on what's going on with this. It's hard for them to see that. But I think the important thing is to confirm, and I think the concern that was asked of me about this was that you are still supporting the SAFE Act, that you haven't backed away from that you are still looking for solutions to, if not remove it, minimize it if possible.
100%. My response is unequivocal.
Okay.
And if I think this is the way that I've been trying to move forward in everything that I'm doing. If people, your audience, my constituents, they have, my door is open. I encourage people to come to me because, again, I'm not going to have all the answers. I think every great piece of legislation or every change comes from somebody's idea, right? It's not necessarily the elected officials' idea. I mean, I'm sitting here because I'm representing people, and it's why I'm traveling so much. So, if people have specific ideas in an effort, if we're going to realize that we can't repeal it tomorrow, but there are some things that we can do to make it better. I'm receptive to having those conversations, and I want everybody to know that.
And I will say that in my research, I found many people who have spoken to you, that you have been receptive to them, that you have been speaking with them and working on ideas. So
Sure.
I do confirm that. Otherwise, I would call you out on it.
Sure.
But it is actually what you are doing, so you do deserve it. Let me switch up
Sure.
to the quote unquote the elephant in the room, the New York SAFE Act, minimum wage, and the budget. And yes, of course, that was one of the questions that came up. Now, you have said in the past, recently, as of, I believe it may have been, yes, April 1st, you've been speaking about the fact that you were against you in your up limit, but ultimately you did approve the budget. The vote was 62-1, and you were part of that 62. I have people who are asking, given your position with small business, to try and given your statements before minimum wage, why did you vote for it?
It's a great question. It truly is, and it's a question that needs to be answered. So I appreciate you helping me get my position out. I truly do.
That's why.
Here's the harsh reality. This budget does great things in terms of record education funding, parity in transportation dollars, the biggest tax cut in decades, right? That's going to directly affect middle-class families and small businesses. moving to the minimum wage, the governor was very, very clear in the assembly. They wanted $15 an hour. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the governor was very clear in saying, fight me on it. I will convene a wage board for every single industry in this state, and we'll make it $15 across the state. And he has the statutory authority to do that.
Sadly.
We know that.
Yeah.
Sadly is right, because we saw him do it in the fast food industry.
Yes.
So when somebody draws a line in the sand, and it was a very deep line, my immediate thought is, how do I mitigate this situation for the people that I represent? What can I do? $15 an hour was a non-starter to me. And I also knew that we were going to have to deal with the paid family leave issue that he was pushing very, very aggressively as well. So for me and my upstate colleagues, this became a matter of, it was a hard fight. It was very, there were, tumultuous discussions, behind closed doors, very spirited and animated conversations about this issue. $15 an hour doesn't work for us. I'm not happy about $12.50, but at the end of the day, for me, about how can we mitigate this the best that we possibly can? If starting wage boards, which we know he can do by statute, and he said do, and I believe him when he says that.
Oh, I don't doubt him. Yeah, he would do it.
He would. He was being pushed very hard, as you know, by big union. And look, I give credit where credit's due. He did a very good job of getting powerful people behind him early process, and got a lot of momentum on this issue. And I've said to me, and privately in meetings, the likes of the Business Council, NFIB, Unshackle Upstate, I wish that effort would have come together a little bit quicker to try to offset some of what the governor was pushing.
Right.
But those agencies, the Business Council, the Farm Bureau, Unshackle, right, all of which I support their their vision. At the end of the day, we conversed with all of those people, and it was an issue of we have to do our best to mitigate the governor's and the assembly's push. So, a phase into $12.50 over a period of years, to me, in the decision that I had to make, was a lot better than going to 15 in a short period of time for everybody. The safety valve also. The safety valve mechanism in the plan also made it a little bit more palatable for me. I'm not pleased with the fact that, DOB, the Department of Budget, is going to be making that determination after year 3. But I think it's going to be very hard for the governor to be able to argue with real numbers, right? I mean, if we don't see job growth, we don't see, we don't see more people working, more manufacturing happening. If the CPI is very low, I think he'll be hard pressed to say that the last 3 years of increases is really a great thing and it's really revived our economy. So let's go to the next step and the next step.
Well,
so, Michael, for me, 15 was a non-starter.
Yeah.
$12.50 I was not happy with, but $12.50 over a phase-in period was a hell of a lot better than having to deal with him and instituting wage boards and then everybody going to 15. So it was not an easy decision. You had to weigh many things in the decision, because really a business in my district would argue that I do care, because I've been traveling and visiting and listening to their concerns and the things that they're faced with on a daily basis. But then to have to make a decision like that, where we eliminating the not to digress or change, but fully instituting the gap elimination adjustment in terms of K fund was critically important.
Okay.
And 10, when the Senate flipped, it took billions and billions of dollars out of upstate schools and sent the money downstate.
Yeah.
And we've been working for years. I say we. I wasn't elected at the time, but the Senate Republicans have been working for years to put that money back into our school districts. And doing away with the GEA was critically important. And I've been in almost every school district in the 52nd.
Okay.
I have a few more to visit, and we're doing it next week.
Good.
But one of the conversations that we were having was, in terms of educating our children, we need the gap elimination goal, and we need an increase in foundation aid. So we were able to accomplish both of those things in that. So I would have preferred the minimum wage to be in a standalone bill.
Right.
It would have been very easy to deal with the issue.
Actually, should have been.
Should have been.
A standalone bill.
Should have been. And
According to the Constitution, New York's Constitution.
that was some of the discussions that we were having about, it would be a lot better. I don't think we had the votes to stop the train.
Okay.
I think that was going to happen one way or the other. But then, unfortunately, that was not the only issue that I had to deal with. It would have been a very simple decision for me.
Up, down, vote.
That's it,
Yeah.
right? But now, in typical bureaucrat fashion, it was put in a big bill with very, very important things.
Mixed with a lot of things.
Yeah, to the rest of the constituency. So, for me, it was all about trying to mitigate the situation.
Okay, I understand that. And I just want to make sure that people understood and gave you the opportunity to give them the full answer.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael.
I know we're just about out of time. Okay, we've got about one more question, so bear with me.
No problem.
As I said, I had a lot, so I just want to see. And I know we didn't get to circle back to what you initially had said was a question you wanted to get to as well from the beginning. Maybe 2 seconds here.
No problem.
I got a whole list. Okay, so actually I'm just going to go with something not prepared. Since the time that you've come in, you initially were with the state police, great record, man of the people, helping out against crime. You got into politics, which is not your original realm, and something that you hadn't had deep thought about beforehand. You weren't on that career path initially. You've got elected. The people support you strongly. You've gone in, you've set some very clear guidelines on what you want to do and what are your targets, your priorities. You're obviously very clear on what you are doing. You understand what people are looking at. With that all understood, what's next? Where are, in the next coming months, where are we seeing Senator Akshar taking on? What subjects are you going to take on? Your goal, what you hope to perhaps? And are you joining being Senator as well?
Yeah, I am. It's truly humbling, and just I'm beyond grateful to the people of this district. I mean, I think they spoke very loudly last November, and to use your words, you say I'm a man of the people, and I like to think that I am. And I'm going to continue to do that because I think that that's the only way. And I don't say it's the only way that I'm going to be successful sitting here at this desk. It's the only way that we're going to be successful as a community is if I continue to be a man of the people and to be amongst the people. And I was at Wegmans the other day getting a sandwich. I sat down and was eating my sandwich. The lady said to me, "Are you the senator?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, I can't believe you're here eating a sandwich." Well, so why not? And well, you're the senator. And well, listen, I was eating sandwiches at Wegmans long before I became elected.
Yeah.
Really, Michael, it's about continuing, for me, it's about continuing to be amongst the people, listening to their concerns, and then producing tangible results. I have big shoes to fill. My predecessor was able to get a lot of big projects accomplished in this district, and I look forward to working hard and being able to do the same thing. Working with other municipal leaders, whether it be to fund, blight removal, critically important.
Big issue.
And whether it be working very closely with the Regional Economic Development Council and how that URI money is distributed, ensuring that we're making very, very wise, targeted investments. We're not putting all of our eggs in one basket. IBM was great for this community. EJ was great for this community. Just two big industries, right? That ended up slowing down and closing up. And what are we left with? We're left with the university and healthcare and a lot of caring, committed people in this community. And I think we need to make very wise wise investments with that money if they're going to be sustainable. But I go back to focusing my energy and attention on the business climate, and not only this district but the state.
Right.
We need better policy when it comes to business. We do,
We're
because
50th.
Michael, you know this.
Oh, yes.
We can take this $500 million, invest it as wisely as we think, but once that money's gone, if we don't change the climate, if we don't reform workers' compensation, unemployment, tear down some of the bureaucracy and red tape that these business owners are faced with, then once that investment is gone, so too will be the businesses.
Yeah, goes right back.
And so my focus, one thing that's critically important, I think for your viewers to know is that one thing I don't know is if I necessarily understood in taking this job is that you have to be able to focus on so many different things at one time, right? Because
Right.
what's important to you is important, and I want to help, but there are also a dozen other people that have equally important issues that we have to move on. So we're successful as a community if I continue to listen, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the staff that I have. I mean, I have a remarkable staff.
Yeah, they've been very helpful to me.
They are a group of dedicated people who have the same exact vision that I do about putting the community first and us later. And I think that that's critically important. And everybody has their niche in this office in which they're subject matter experts. They're committed to the people that we represent, and it's made my transition here in the district a lot easier than I could have ever imagined. So, to anybody who thinks that this is a part-time job, which some would argue, if you're doing it right, I would argue against that. Because it doesn't matter if it's a Saturday or a Sunday. If we need to be in Owego at 10 o'clock and then Norwich, by 1 o'clock, and then back in Binghamton by 3, well, we do it. Because I pledged to the people that I was going to be accessible, and I'm trying to keep my word on that.
To everyone except the news. It's been very hard for me.
Well, we're here now.
Which is good, but that's good. It's doing the job. So obviously that's more important. By the way, people, this is an
to your industry, between making merges at the events in the community. Generally speaking, I lean that way, and then we try to schedule the news or the interview.
As a constituent, I like that.
All right.
As news media, not as much, but it's a fair turnout. Now, I want to thank you again for giving us this exclusive interview, to give you the opportunity to speak to constituents on some of their questions. I hope that you feel this was fair. We try to make sure that we give fair, tough sometimes, but fair questions, and allow you the chance to speak to the people. Obviously, anytime that you want to speak, we're always available to give you the opportunity. As you know, it's always verbatim, and we want you to have that ability to let people know what's going on, and to have that access. But overall, first of all, thank you, and we do, the community appreciate you. They've told me that, and I know that from just the people who were telling me about this interview. You are being appreciated. Your staff has done a wonderful job. They've been very helpful to me in doing my job, and you've been doing a great job, and I've been following, and I'm going to keep following.
No, thank you.
And I have to also say, and if you don't, I'm going to come. I'll be here again.
I would expect you to.
Either way, actually, I'm going to be back and stay in touch with you. I don't know if there's anything else. I know you got to go. We're actually over on time, so I thank you for that. But otherwise, I just want you to have a great day. Keep up the good job.
Thank you.
And stay in touch.
No, accountability is important. We'll leave on that. And I expect not only those in your industry to hold me accountable, but the people that I represent. I would expect nothing different. So as issues arise, if they're small issues, big issues, you want clarification on my position, our door is open. And always happy to do that, because that's what the people deserve.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.